Fun story. I drove all over Waynesboro tonight trying to find a store with Virginia gear that is based in the color orange. I'm my podcast studio here, Chris Graham on the podcast, um, and I'm looking over at all these football jerseys and basketball jerseys and Nats World Series jerseys, and I've got everything you can think of, but uh my Virginia t-shirts that are orange are all baseball shirts, baseball t-shirts. And I've got a sweatshirt that just says "Who's" on it, and it'll be hot in Cameron Indoor Stadium tomorrow night. Less than 24 hours actually, if from me recording this podcast. Yeah, heading down to Duke tomorrow night, and it'll be for me my first game, Virginia basketball game, watching in person as a fan in 10 years since the last time I was down at Duke in 2014. Uh, and so, I'm like, hey, I get to, dress like a fan, I get to, deck myself out. And I realized here it is Friday. I wanted to wear orange because, our dark blue, navy blue can be anybody. Anybody's wearing blue, but the only people in Cameron Indoor tomorrow night wearing orange will be the fans because even the guys will be wearing either. I guess they'll probably be wearing their road blues. Um, so I figured, my wife and I wanted to. So my wife found a sweatshirt at one of the stores, but Waynesboro is light on much of anything from that standpoint. So I'm like to figure this out. It'll be interesting to figure out. In the meantime, podcast. Got to get you ready for UVA Duke. Uh, in my trip down tomorrow night, right? So the headline I wrote to the preview I wrote today on the AFP website: Virginia heads to Duke, where a Cavalier court storm could help the NCAA resume. And I mentioned that I had to reference the court storm nonsense that made Duke's loss at Wake Forest last weekend more about a national conversation we didn't know we needed to have, as opposed to it being about a team that just didn't play good defense. That's pretty much the case with Duke at Wake last weekend, 83-79 loss. Demon Deacon shot 60.4% in that win for Wake, preceding the court storm. And outside of that game, Duke's playing as well as anybody in the country of late. They've just lost three games since the turn of the calendar towards 2024. The losses being at Wake and Duke, and then excuse me, yeah, at Wake and UNC, they're Duke, and then a home loss to Pitt that at the time didn't make any sense, but Pitt's been playing so well of late. This Duke team looked pretty vulnerable early in the season. They were just 5-3 on December 2nd after a loss to Georgia Tech, which came after another loss to Arkansas that made no sense. Those two teams now with combined records of 26-30, and Duke lost those games back to back. Season long, this is a pretty good Duke defensive team. Season long, their defense number nationally is 25th in the country, according to KenPom, defensive efficiency wise. Now, in the ACC, they're fifth out of the 15 teams. And their points per possession has gone up a little bit, a good bit, actually. They are first in the ACC in ACC games only in offensive efficiency, and in the on the season long numbers, they're eighth nationally. So that's where the bread is buttered for this Duke team. Breaking down this Duke rotation, you know some of these guys. In fact, it's kind of weird that you know a lot of these guys. Kyle Filipowski was a surprise returnee after a pretty good freshman season. The big 7 foot stretch five is averaging 16.6 points, 8.3 rebounds a game. He's shooting 49.9% from the field, 34.4% from three. So not as good from three as you'd think just based on reputation. Uh, he was Willis Reed the other night in the win over Louisville. You would think that the way the ESPN folks made it out that Filipowski had pretty much broken every bone in his body in the court storm. He played 30 minutes in the Louisville game, so he wasn't hurt too bad. I mean, you know, whatever. Um, so he's the anchor of the front court. The guy who does the dirty work is Mark Mitchell, 6'9" sophomore, big kid, 6'9", 230. 12.8 points a game, 6.3 rebounds a game, shoots 55% from the field, doesn't shoot many threes, doesn't shoot them well, 25%, but he can make threes. Um, and then the other two guys in the front court who get minutes are 6'10" senior Ryan Young, the Northwestern transfer, gets 11 minutes a game, does some decent stuff in those 11 minutes. And then 6'9" freshman Sean Stewart gets 8 minutes a game and does good stuff in those 8 minutes a game. So, there's some talent there in the on the bench, and then there's talent certainly in the front court and starting two there. Their backcourt, their three-man backcourt, Jeremy Roach, joked in the preview column that I wrote today. Seems like he's been there since Dr. Naismith put up the first Peach basket. Just because, I mean, Roach was a guy. He was a five-star recruit. He came in two or three one and done classes ago, and I mean, he's going to play in the NBA. It's surprising to me that he didn't leave after maybe a sophomore year and then after a junior year. So he's back. He's averaging 14.4 a game, shoots 49.6% from the field, 48% from three, has the ball in his hands a lot. That's dangerous. Um, the other point guard, let's just say, is Tyrese Proctor, 6'5" kid, sophomore, another guy that I just figured was going to go pro after his freshman year. 10.2 points, 3.7 rebounds a game. Good shooting numbers, 44% from the field, 35.7% from three. He finally got back in the starting lineup Wednesday night. He had been eased back in. He suffered a concussion, a concussion. Feels like I had a concussion in the win over Wake Forest at home back on February 12th, and he had to miss the next game. And then, like I said, he's back into the starting lineup, but he's been putting up good numbers all season long. The other two guards who split time at the other off guard spot are a pair of freshmen, 6'3" Jared McCain, 13.6 points a game, 46% from the field, 41.8% from three. And then 6'5", the other freshman, Caleb Foster, 7.7 points a game. Good shooting numbers, 43.7% from the field and 40.6% from three. So, I mean, if you listen to those numbers, and I'll link to all this on the website, both for I'll link on the YouTube description and the podcast description. You'll be able to read these, study them more in depth. These guys can all shoot the ball, and so there's a reason this team is eighth in the country in offensive efficiency. Pretty good team. Not very deep, but pretty good team. Looks like they'll play seven guys, maybe eight, but and how Virginia matches up. This is one where we wish Elijah Gertrude was a little further along. I'll say that from an athletic standpoint, because Roach and Proctor are both basically NBA point guards. I really think so. I mean, maybe they're not going to be starting guards as rookies, but they're going to be contributors wherever they go next year. And I presume that. I mean, I guess they both could come back. Roach is a guy who played in the COVID year, so he could come back if he wanted to, but he's going to go pro. And I think Proctor, there's no way he's not going to go pro after this year. They're both NBA types. Virginia's only got one, Reese Beekman, the senior, who came back after going into the draft process last year. And so that's an edge. I mean, having two guys with a high level of skill handling the ball is better than having one who has a high level of skill handling the ball. This is where I'll bring up that Tony Bennett and Ron Sanchez fixed the offense this week by going with a more traditional two guard, two forward, one center lineup. Virginia, for many years, with Tony Bennett in his mover blocker offense, because of the offense being the way it is, he would have three guards basically and two forwards. The two forwards on offense setting the screens and the three guards taking turns running off the screens. Well, to fix the offense, to get the best offense out there, Jake Groves, who's a stretch four, started a lot of games this season back in November and early December as a stretch five. He replaced at least for the one game, and I'll presume for the rest of the season based on what Tony had to say after the BC win. Andrew Rohde, the 6'6" other off guard in the starting lineup. Groves played 30 minutes the other night and scored in double digits and stretched the opponent's defense. And it just makes sense that he'll be back out there again trying to do a similar thing. What this means then, when I go back to Duke's two NBA level point guards in Roach and Proctor, this means Isaac McNeely, the 6'4" sophomore who's an off guard, will have to guard either Roach or Proctor, depending on who Bennett puts Beekman on. and that may switch through the game. The flip side of that, and so I'm giving Duke an advantage here. They got, two high level point guards. Virginia's got one, and they'll have Isaac McNeely, who's a good team defender, but he's not athletically the level of either Roach or Proctor. Um, the flip side, though, is Virginia gets a matchup advantage on the other end because, presuming that Virginia will go with Jake Groves for something close to 30 minutes again, Ryan Dunn close to 30 minutes. Um, John Shire will have to have his second off guard spot. It's either the 6'3" guy McCain or the 6'5" guy Foster guarding either Groves at 6'9" or Ryan Dunn 6'8", kid who's been playing forward all season for Virginia. I would assume that Shire probably will try to match his smaller guy, his second guard, with Dunn, just because Dunn's offensive game is limited. You saw this week, he was used as a guard in the BC game, and BC, obviously the kids there read their scouting reports and listened to him, heeded them. They left him open on the perimeter. Dunn tried two threes. They both airballed. Virginia, fortunately for Virginia, rebounded both air balls and scored points on both of those air balls after the offensive rebounds. But Dunn is not a danger from the perimeter. He's not a guy who's going to dribble drive past you. His offense is entirely catching the ball on backdoor cuts and offensive rebounding. And what that's going to mean is Dunn's going to have to be active on offense. If he's going to run off screens, if he's going to be on the perimeter, he's going to have to be able, after he passes the ball out of, when he gets the ball outside on the 3-point line, cut hard to the basket. Do some give and go type stuff. Just be active, be moving, have a motor going, and make Duke pay for putting a guy who's either 3 or 5 inches shorter on him, and certainly crash the board, the offensive boards particularly. And and he gets a fair amount of baskets in transition as well. So those will be that'll be the thing to do there. And honestly, I think that defensively or offensively, I should say, that Groves will have an advantage going up against Mark Mitchell if that's where things end up being. He'll his ability to stretch the floor will pull Mitchell away from the rim, take him away from rebounding position, and Groves can run him around a little bit out there on the perimeter. So that could be an advantage to Virginia too. I think that the two guard spots, there will be a net advantage for Duke. I think at the two forward spots, or for Duke, the guard slash forward spots, I think Virginia will have the advantage. At center's where the worry is for me. I mean, for obvious reasons, Filipowski, the guy who's going to be second half of the lottery guy when he comes out this year. I don't think there's any question about the fact he's going to come out this year. Um, and Virginia's been starting Jordan Minor for quite a while now. I wonder though if and I don't wonder. Blake Buchanan is going to be a better solution defensively. I don't know that Jordan Minor doesn't start, kind of like how Jack Salt would start games for Virginia and sometimes play 8 or 10 minutes. Minor likely gets to start and likely plays to the first TV timeout. But Blake Buchanan, this is one area where his mobility and his motor will be an advantage for Virginia defensively, at least trying to keep up with Filipowski. I don't know that you say anything about stopping Filipowski. Virginia did last year pretty well with him in both games, but I would think that at least make him work for the baskets. You can maybe also see Drake Groves getting some turns down the floor if necessary against Filipowski, but on the defensive end. But that's going to be the matchup. I think that Duke's got an advantage at the 1 and 2 spots just because. I mean, I really think they'll have a slight advantage there. I think Virginia's got a slight advantage at the 3 and 4. I think what Virginia can do to mitigate as much of the disadvantage of the 5 is going to be key to how this game plays. And I mean, of course, then there's the intangibles playing in Cameron. Virginia won his last time there. It's a very different team now than it was then. But Reese Beekman hitting a three in the last couple of seconds, what gave Virginia an upset. I think it was a 1-point win, 69-68 in that game. That was a thrilling game. I remember that game so well. Virginia rallying in the last couple of minutes. It was a nice back and forth affair down the stretch. These are very different teams, and it's a different time of the season. That game was more early February. This is obviously we're in March now. The second to last weekend of the regular season. Duke is a team that probably projects, I mean, does project right now from the computers as a probably three seed in the NCAA tournament. Virginia is still in the on the 10-11 line. I don't know that from a perspective of tournament bids and seeding that a loss here uh, does Virginia any ill. All the computers project Virginia to lose this game. A win, a win, and you're in. I mean, no matter what happens the rest of the way, you win. Steal a quad one win at Duke this late in the season would I mean you can go ahead and start planning your travel, right? But um yeah, this is so from that standpoint, I mean, I don't know that I expect a win coming out of this game as we're starting to wrap up here on the podcast. It's a tough matchup. I mean, every matchup at this time of the year is a tough matchup. You're in the ACC, one of the better conferences in the country. But I mean, I've laid out a blueprint for how Virginia can win this game. Get some activity out of Ryan Dunn. Get some stretching the floor from Jake Groves. Uh, have Reese Beekman outplay the guy that he goes primarily one-on-one against. Have Isaac McNeely hold serve as best as possible. And if Blake Buchanan can make Kyle Filipowski work, that's all you have to do. He let him, he'll get his 15 points and 10 rebounds. But if he has to work for those, maybe put up a few extra shots to get the points, this is a game that Virginia can win. You know, and so for me, then, I'm going to go and be a fan for a couple hours. That'll be fun too. My wife is going with me. She's never been to a game at Duke. This will probably be the one trip down for that purpose. So, get to live it a little bit through her eyes, which will be pretty cool. Um, and we'll kind of go from there. So the fact I'll be traveling, because also, I mean, the other part of my weekend is I'm a big pro wrestling fan. Sunday night in Greensboro, just 45 minutes away from Durham, is the All Elite Wrestling AEW Revolution pay-per-view event at the Greensboro Coliseum, the traditional home of the ACC tournament, which is this year in Washington, D.C. Um, and it's the pro wrestler Sting's retirement match. And so I'm going to be there in person. It'll be the first pay-per-view that I've attended. I've been to one other pay-per-view, but I was part of the group that helped put that on. I was on the creative team for a company called Awesome Wrestling Entertainment, AWE, back in 2011, and I wrote the formats and the backstories for that pay-per-view card. Watching it from gorilla position, very different than it'd be for me on Sunday night. Watching it from the lower level as a fan. For one thing, I won't have Kevin Nash yelling at me in gorilla position. But no, this will be a fun weekend for me. But so from the standpoint of covering the game, the game will end 8-ish, 8:15. I'll have an hour plus drive back from Durham to my hotel in Greensboro where we're in camping for the weekend because of the fact that the pay-per-view is Sunday night in Greensboro. So don't expect any writing from me until 11 o'clock maybe. But yeah, we'll still do the best we can to have the regular coverage after the game. It's a big game. It's the Duke game. And Sunday morning will be a lot of good stuff too. So um, in that as I guess that kind of wraps us up. Hey, if you have any questions for me, any comments, any observations, anything else, please email me at chris@augustafreepress.com.